Surah Taha. وَلَا تَعْجَلْ بِالْقُرْآنِ. Do not hasten with this Quran. مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يُقْضَى إِلَيْكَ وَحْيُهُ. Wait, O Muhammad alayhi salam. Wait until I have completed the wahi of this Quran. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And make this dua. O Allah, kindly increase for me my knowledge. But it is not to ask for knowledge generally. No. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Kindly increase for me my knowledge of this subject. When we get the knowledge of this subject, then we will know how to live with sacred time. So now, question. What is our Prophet doing that Allah should say to him, stop, don't be so fast with this Quran? What is it? The Quran came down in two ways. The first one is well known. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. The Prophet ﷺ said that the whole Quran came down on the night of Qadr, but it came to the Sama ad-Dunya. And from the Sama ad-Dunya, Jibreel ﷺ brought it down piece by piece over a period of 23 years. And when the Quran came down in this way, through wahi or revelation, it was instantly memorized. And so he had to wait for 23 years to memorize the whole Quran. But the Quran came down another way as well. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. That the whole Quran also came down in the month of Ramadan over a period of 1 month. 1 month completely, entier. What happened? How did the Quran come down in this second way over a period of 1 month? The Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, said, every night of Ramadan, Allah would recite a portion of the Quran to me. But he used the medium of the angel Jibreel, but he was doing the reciting. And he would recite the whole Quran in Ramadan. And this is the reason why we have Salatul Taraweeh. We have lost the heart of Salatul Taraweeh. When the Quran was recited every night of Ramadan by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this was not wahi. This was recited for his ear. He is listening to it. When it is wahi, it is instantly memorized. But now when it is recited for his ears, it is not instantly memorized. And this is why we have two ayat of the Quran. One in Surah Al-Qiyamah and the second in Surah Al-Taha. We quoted for you Taha already. La ta'ajal bil Quran. Do not make haste with this Quran. Why is he making haste? And now Surah Al-Qiyamah, وَلَا تُحَرِّكْ بِهِ لِسَانَكَ لِتَعْجَلَ بِهِ. Stop what you're doing, Muhammad. alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't move your tongue so swiftly with this Quran. The reason why he is moving his tongue rapidly while Allah is reciting the Quran is because he is hearing Quran he's never heard before. It has not come as yet as wahi, and he wants to memorize it. So Allah says to him, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إنا علينا جمعه وقرآنه. Do not move your tongue so rapidly with this Quran to try to memorize it. We will bring all the parts of the Quran together as a whole, and we will recite it to you. Now listen, now listen, now listen. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ الْقُرْآنَ فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ الْقُرْآنَ. Let me say it one more time. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ الْقُرْآنَ. And when I have recited this Quran to you, you must follow that way of recitation. ثم إن علينا بيان. After I have taught you how to recite the Quran, only then will I teach you the Quran, the meaning of the Quran. So tomorrow, when we begin the subject of methodology for study of the Quran, the first page in methodology, you cannot study the Quran unless you are reciting the Quran. And that's why I wrote my book, The Quran and the Moon, Methodology for Recitation of the Quran. I was astonished when I met a Christian friend, a scholar. He's from the Balkans, from Serbia, Belgrade. He lives here in France, and he teaches methodology for reciting the Gospel. I asked him to write the foreword to my book of the Moon. Now then, the Prophet is hearing every year in Ramadan the whole Quran. Except in the last year of his life, Allah recited the whole Quran twice. Now, and only now, can we understand this ayah of the Quran in Surah Al-A'la. Listen to it. سَنُقْرِئُكَ فَلَا تَنْسَى إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ. I am going to teach you to recite. Recite what? Only the Quran, nothing else. I am going to teach you to recite the Quran. And when I teach you to recite the Quran, you will not forget what I teach you, except that which I want you to forget. So what is that part of the Quran that Allah is teaching him to recite? But Allah then makes him forget. Who will help me?
Qui peut m'aider?
Yeah.
The parts of the Quran which were recited by the angel Jibreel alayhi salam. What has not come into revelation?
MashaAllah. Correct answer. Many of the ulama can't give that answer that he gave. I am astonished. This is indeed Louis Santon. All that part of the Quran which has not as yet come down as wahi, and Allah has recited it in Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ is made to forget it. So the next year he'll be hearing it as though for the first time. Now then comes the big question. If Allah has brought all the parts of the Quran together, and he now has to recite the Quran one part every night, he has to divide the Quran. The only division of the Quran that we know of, which has come down from above, is the division into surah, plural of surah. The first surah, Al-Fatiha. The second surah, Al-Baqarah. We do not know of any other division of the Quran which has come from above. Where is the proof? Where is the proof that Allah divided the Quran into surahs? And why did he do that? Come on, somebody help me.
Allah says in the Quran that He divided the Quran for its recitation.
Tell me where. And don't speak in French. Okay, somebody
I
else?
don't remember. Quelqu'un d'autre?
Yes?
Surat Al-Isra.
Yes, come on, give me the ayah. No, you're not used it anymore. Anybody else?
Quelqu'un d'autre?
Peut-être chez les femmes. Hein.
Yes?
Maybe woman. I don't know.
What is the ayah?
Can you repeat? The Quran, you have divided it in parts. Is it the correct verse?
He's speaking in French or Arabic?
In Arabic.
What did he say? Is that the ayah? That's not the ayah.
C'est pas la bonne.
Qur'anan. Yes, Surah Al-Isra, correct. Qur'anan. Faraknahu. Why? لِتَذْكَرَهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ عَلَى مُكْثٍ. We have divided this Quran into surahs. And the reason why we divided the Quran into surahs was not primarily for knowledge. No. We divided the Quran into surahs primarily for method of recitation. So if the Quran begins with a surah with 7 ayat, Surah Al-Fatiha, this is for the purpose of recitation. And if after that comes the longest surah of all in the Quran, 287 ayah, this is for the purpose of recitation. 7 verses here and 287 there.
86.
What is the meaning of this? Because Allah explains in the Quran, سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِي وَالْقُرْآنِ الْكَرِيمِ, that there are 7 oft repeated verses and the Quran that is noble. He separates the two. Why? Because every night that you sit down to recite the Quran, you always begin with Al-Fatiha. Always. And then you recite the juz for the night. Luckily. So, Fatiha is luckily, the key for opening the Quran. Without the key to open, you cannot recite the Quran. It won't be accepted. The Quran is not a lifeless thing. The Quran is alive. It's called travaux préparatoires. You have to first open the Quran, then you can recite the Quran. And so now then, why does the Quran begin with the longest surah of all? But that's not all. The Quran begins with 6 long surahs. 6 long surahs. Is this by accident? This is our answer. And you do not have to accept our answer. No. If you are not comfortable with it, you can look for something else. We say that Allah begins the Quran with 6 long surahs, so that these 6 long surahs are recited on the first 6 days of the month. Since Allah recited Ramadan, He waited for the Hilal of Ramadan. So we always begin the Quran with the Hilal. And then for the first 6 days of the month, we recite Al-Fatiha and the 6 long surahs. Then we come to the conclusion. If I am wrong, tell me what is right. That on the first night, when Allah recited the Quran to Nabi Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, He recited Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Baqarah. And on the second night, Al-Fatiha and the whole of Ali Imran. And on the third night, Al-Fatiha and the whole of An-Nisa. And on the fourth night, Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Ma'idah. And on the fifth night, Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-An'am. And on the sixth night, Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-A'raf. If I am wrong, tell me what is right. Allah would not divide the Quran into surahs for the purpose of recitation. And then on the first night, He recites until, you won't believe this. You won't believe this. This nonsense. That on the first night He recited until verse 141 in Al-Baqarah. And then He chopped. And then the second night He started from 142 until 252. And then He chopped. And on the third night He from 253 until Ali Imran 91. He did not do this nonsense. So now we came to the conclusion that the reason why He gave us 6 long surahs to recite on the first 6 days of the month is because these 6 long surahs correspond to the 6 days of creation. And so while we are reciting the Quran on the first 6 days of every month, our hearts are being transported to cosmic time. But we still have a question to answer. Why is Al-Baqarah the longest of all? Who will help me?
Keep a minute. Because in the beginning of the month, we have a lot of energy.
Yes, that's a good answer. A good answer. When the moon is young, Allah wants us to be strong. And when the moon is old and we're tired, He gives us short surahs. But that is only part of the answer. What else is there? Why does the Quran begin with the longest surah of all? What connection is there with sacred time? Come on, somebody else.
Because we don't know if the month will end on the 29th or the 13th day.
Okay.
So the bigger surat are in the
All
beginning.
right, go ahead.
Because the bigger surats are carrying the most important topics,
Okay.
and because Surat Al-Baqarah is a kind of a ruqya, that's
Okay. I
purifies.
want to know the connection between the longest surah of all and the system of time. I want the sisters to answer me, but my wife must not answer. Go ahead. Any sister? Okay. Sacred time begins with absolute time. One day with Allah is like 50,000 years of your counting. So absolute time is the longest of all. And so Al-Baqarah is the longest one of all, not by accident. When we begin Al-Baqarah, we begin with absolute time. and we move to cosmic time. And now then, Allah knows best if this is correct. Only Allah knows. This is our view, and Allah knows best. Now then, if Allah began the Quran with 6 long surahs, how do we explain that on the 7th day of the month, He gives us a short surah, Al-Anfal, and the surah which comes after Al-Anfal is the only surah which does not have the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Is this by accident? But I also said Surah Al-Anfal is a short surah. So now then, who will help me? Why is Al-Anfal short? And why is the surah which comes after Al-Anfal so strange? No Bismillah. We have one here. Anybody else? 2, 3. Go ahead.
Maybe it means that there is a continuous rhythm. It's not stopping there.
Be close to the answer. Next one. Yeah.
Because God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and then He rested on the 7th day.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe it's a means by which Allah protected the Quran for those who wanted to change it.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe it has something to do with the week, 7 days, and then we come back to the
Okay.
beginning.
Yes.
Maybe it's a way to show us that the time is changing to something else, to another dimension of time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
He said, maybe it was done to commemorate the 6 days of creation.
Yes, but the most important thing you're not telling me. Go ahead. Let me hear you.
He said, maybe because the 2 short surahs must be recitated on the same day, so that's why they are short. And maybe because, like Allah gave to the Banu Israel the 6 days and then the Shabbat.
Yes. All right, you're all coming close to my view. The reason why on the 7th day He gave us a short surah, Al-Anfal, followed by a Tawbah, which does not have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, is to tell us that this is your juz, for the 7th day. For 6 days you were reciting 1 surah every day. But on the 7th day you will join these 2 surahs to comprise your juz for the 7th day. And in the process of joining these 2 surahs, this is how you commemorate the 6 days of creation. So this is the reason why a Tawbah does not have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah wants us to join these 2 surahs as our juz on the 7th day. That is why a Tawbah does not have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So when you're reciting the Quran on the 7th day, you are now commemorating the 6 days of creation. They had the law of the Sabbath. We don't have that law of the Sabbath. But Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ أَوْ نُنْسِيهَا نَأْتِي بِخَيْرٍ مِنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. That I do not cause any law to be cancelled, abrogated, or forgotten, but that I replace it with that which is better or similar. So here is an instance of Naskh, that law is still valid for them, that they are not allowed to work on the day of the Sabbath. They can pray, they can rest, but they're not allowed to work. And that law, we don't have it. So Allah gave us something else in replacing that. This is what He gave us. I'm going to have to move swiftly now because of the late hour. But you can get the whole subject in my book, The Quran and the Moon. All my books are available on my website. About 12 have already been translated to French. And we are now about to establish a system. He doesn't know it, but he's going to be in charge of getting all my books translated to French. We have to get a system, a group of volunteers to help him. All my books for the last 20 years can be downloaded free of charge. I would spend a whole year or more in writing a book and then put it on the internet for free download. And I earned my livelihood as a writer. But now the people are becoming less and less capable of buying books because slavery is coming. Ça vient.
Ça arrive.
And so now what we do, we charge a very small fee for downloading the e-books. Maybe €2 for all the books, each one book. Yeah. And so now then, when the Prophet ﷺ was explaining what constitutes a month, he says, we are not illiterate people, we don't know how to read and write. And a month is comprised of this, and he raised his hands. And then he lowered his hand. And then he said this, and he lowered, and he said this. So a month is comprised of first part 10 days, second part 10, third part 10. Except that in the last part, sometimes the moon is seen at the end of the 29th day. So the month will have 29 days. So now then, on the 7th day, we have 2 surahs. On the 8th, 2. On the 9th, 2. And on the 10th, 2. But on the 11th one, and this is for marking the first 1/3 is now ended. I am leaving out parts of the subject to save on time, okay? When the moon is half, la lune de miel, the middle of the month, full moon, then Allah gives us Surah An-Nur. Surah An-Nur when there is full moon. And when the second part of the 10, the 30, the second 10 is ending on the 20th day, then on the 21st day Allah gives us something to mark the beginning of the last 1/3. In Ramadan, this distinction between the first 1/3, the second, and the third 1/3 is very important, because we know that in the last 1/3 of Ramadan, there is Laylatul Qadr, which is better than 1,000 months. And on that night, تَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحُ, the angels come down, and the Ruh, meaning Ruhul Qudus, min kulli amr, to perform any task assigned to them by Allah. And that's why Mama and Grandma used to teach us, you have to welcome the angels. And the reason why Allah given us incense, bakhur, is because the angels love the bakhur. So when the 21st night of Ramadan comes, We know Laylatul Qadr is one of the odd nights of Ramadan, the last 1/3. So all the children will be waiting, Mama, when you going to put Bahur? It is 21st night now. We have to welcome the angels. This is important in the psychology of religion. So now every month Allah prepares us for Laylatul Qadr. Every month. Because on the 21st day, He gives us Suratul Fussilat. And in Suratul Fussilat there is this ayah. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون إلى آخر الآية. And on the 21st day, Allah gives us this verse of Surah Al-Fussilat, that those who declare with their hearts, Rabbuna Allah, our Rabb is Allah, the angels come down upon them, that they should live a life in which there will be no cause for grief and no cause for fear. This is how Surah Al-Fussilat welcomes the last 1/3 of the month. When the 23rd day of the month has come to an end, there is only 1 week left in the month. All through the month we've been looking at the moon. But now something strange happens in the sky. The evening sky and there is no moon. Is this by accident? No, this is not by accident. When the last portion of the month has come, the moon disappears from the evening sky, and instead of the moon we have the stars. So we have a Najm and Al-Qamar in a relationship with each other. A Najm and Al-Qamar. The sky is now with stars and the moon is gone. We see in the last week of the month the relationship between the star and the moon. That the sky is now filled with stars and the moon has disappeared from the evening sky. And now look at the Quran and you see Surah Al-Najm and next to it Surah Al-Qamar. In other words, the moon was there to teach you to recite the Quran. And now I give you the stars to teach you how to study the Quran. You do not study the Quran, this surah, that surah, that surah, that surah. Read that for Washington. You have to study the Quran the way you study the stars. Which surah?
Quelle surah?
Come on, somebody. Huh? Surah Al-Waqiyah. Who can recite the ayah? Come on, somebody. Yes? That's right. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I'll come back to Louis Saint another time, inshallah. I'm happy. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ إلى آخر الآية. And so now then, as the month comes to an end, Allah transports us from a methodology for recitation of the Quran to a methodology for study of the Quran. But now then, Which night is it? Laylatul Qadr. We know it's one of the odd nights. Around the world, we are told it's 27. So 27, the masjid is packed. 29, everybody in the bazaar. 29, everybody in the market, bazaar. Is there a hint from Allah which night is it? Yes, there is. You have to look to see where did He put Suratul Qadr in the Quran. And when we look at the location of Suratul Qadr in the Quran, we come to the conclusion that Laylatul Qadr is most likely the 29th night of Ramadan. I am taught this way of reciting the Quran not only to Muslims, but to Christians as well. There might be some of the Christians listening to this lecture on the internet. And these are Christians, and they say, Sheikh, I'm reciting the Quran with the moon. Yes, I just gave a lecture at the University of Belgrade. And sitting next to me and translating my lecture was a very famous professor of law. And the auditorium was packed to capacity, no place to sit down. And that professor told me he's already memorized a few surahs of the Quran. He's Christian. He can recite it in Arabic. You will recite the Quran this way all the rest of your life, and so do your wives and your children, provided you fall in love with the Quran. There are some who have more love for the euro than for the Quran. There are some who have more love for a woman or a man than the Quran. There are those who have power more than the Quran. There are those who love life, they want to live for 1,000 years. More love for life than the Quran. I will not ask you to love the Quran unless I am also one who loves the Quran. The greatest love of my life is the Quran. And so now we conclude. If you recite the Quran this way, with the moon, with the correct tunes every night, and you khatam the Quran every lunar month, you, your wife, your children, then you will eventually live with sacred time. And when you live with sacred time, you will no longer perceive time moving faster and yet faster. Whatever I have taught you, if you are convinced it is correct, you must teach it to the others who come to the masjid but are not here. Now, if you don't mind, I have a question to ask. I don't want to embarrass you. I just want to know, is there anyone who completes the recitation of the Quran every month? Put your hands up. One, mashallah. Two, three, mashallah, mashallah. Okay. All right, so tomorrow we turn to the methodology for study of the Quran for 2 days. And then on Yawm al-Ahad, the most important event now waiting to occur in history is the return of the Messiah, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And then Yawm al-Ithnain, Monday, it's a general day for any questions you want. And I say goodbye on Yawm al-Ithnain, Yawm al-Thalatha, inshallah. Any questions?
The question is, when you said that we have a virus in the heart which is modifying our perception of time, is everybody the same? At what level does one have this distortion of his perception of time?
As you depart from living with sacred time, you increasingly perceive time moving faster and faster. And as you return to living with sacred time, you eventually no longer perceive time moving faster.
De cette concordance,
When Muhammad Amin writes his essay on the night and the day, and inshallah, make sure it's a comprehensive essay and it's written the way a poet would write. Then you'll get some meat to eat, to fill your stomach, of how to live with sacred time. This essay will help you.
the question is, can we relate the different cycle of human being with the different cycles of lunar time? For example, the hormone, which are secreted on the 6th days, not on the 7th, or the baby, the process of creation of the baby in the mother's womb and after his birth, etc.
I don't have the competence to offer any comment other than one, and that is the cycle that women have, monthly cycle. When a woman has a monthly cycle, then it is normal for her not to recite the Quran. When the monthly cycle has ended and she's taking her ghusl, she must now check to see how much time there is left before the month will end. And if it is possible for her to increase the number of juz, ajza, that she recites every day, and complete the Quran by the end of the month, then she should do that. But women have 500,000 things to do, when men have only one. The life of a woman is very complex and very busy. Men have the easy life, women have the difficult life. So it is quite possible that she may not be able to complete the Quran, even when she tries to increase the amount of juz and stuff. In that case, what she will do is continue to recite the Quran in the new month until you khatam the Quran. There are two laws in reciting the Quran. The first, you must always begin the Quran with the moon, the new moon, the hilal. Number two, once you begin the Quran, you never stop until you khatam the Quran. You must first khatam the Quran before you can recommence. And so, she will continue to recite in the new month until she khatams the Quran. After that, she can recite from any part of the Quran she wishes until the new moon comes. And then she starts the Quran afresh.
Okay, the first question is regarding the Antichrist, Dajjal. Does he have an impact in his efforts in multi dimensions? And is he working with Iblis or he is working alone?
There is evidence in Surah Al-Kahf of the relationship between Dajjal and time. And that's how I began the lecture in the first session. When the rabbis asked the three questions, which only a prophet can answer, and Allah answered the questions, He always answered them first by repeating the question. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. But the third question about the young man in the cave, he does not repeat the question. Answer, because this one is connected with Dajjal and he wants to keep them guessing. In this story about the young man in the cave, we see movement in different dimensions of time, continuous movement back and forth, and that is the Dajjal. The reason why he does not repeat the question is because he knows that they're asking about Al-Masih al-Dajjal, and he wants to keep them guessing.
Look at this one.
Next question.
He asked, second question, Dajjal, does he works with Iblis?
ويبعث معه شياطين يشبهون بالأموات يقولون للحي تعرفني أنا أبوك أنا أخوك أو ذو قرابة منك. This is a prophecy of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that they will be raised with the shayateen, who will assume the appearance of people who died. Same voice, same face, everything. Don't you recognize me, son? I'm your papa. This is cloning.
One question at a time, or
One question at a time, please. I'm an old man.
So the first question is, as a young student, how can I implement this concept of living with sacred time in my daily basis?
Is it too difficult to have your dinner early and not to eat too much? Number one. Is it too difficult to go to sleep early, put away your phone, put away the internet, put away the chatting, the blah blah, and go to sleep early? Is that too difficult? Number three. Is it too difficult to get your deep sleep early and then your light sleep? And then in the last hour of the morning, you should not be sleeping. You should be waking. Get up, make your wudu, recite the Quran. That is the most important one. Reciting the Quran in the last hour of the morning. Then you have zikr, you have istighfar, you have salatul tahajjud and so on. And you climb the mountain. It's not men alone who must climb the mountain. Women must also climb the mountain. One sister attended the first lecture, and that sister wrote to me and gave me a synopsis and her views of the subject. And when I read that and I showed it to my wife, she said, send it to me, I want to read it. I said to that sister, you are a poet philosopher. I'm proud. So it's not only men who must climb the mountain, women as well. It's the mountain of knowledge, the intellectual mountain and the spiritual mountain. There are things in life which money cannot buy. There are things in life which money cannot buy. Climbing the mountain is one of them. I always try to recite my juz of the Quran in the last hour of the night, before Fajr. Sometimes I can't do it, sometimes, because for some reason or the other I go to sleep too late, and then it spoils my night when I go to sleep too late. So when I cannot finish the Quran before Fajr, then I do it immediately after Fajr. However, our Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, would not sleep at night unless he has completed his juz of the Quran. If you do not do it in the morning, before Fajr or after Fajr, Shaitan is going to make your day so busy that suddenly the night will come and you're tired and sleepy and you've not yet recited your juz of the Quran. Shaitan will do that to you. So my advice to you is make sure, having attended these lectures of mine, that you now change your way of life if you are living the wrong way. And make sure you recite your juz of the Quran every day, the correct juz, before Fajr, before Salatul Fajr. You can do it if you make the effort. Shaitan also gets a good laugh. He laughs his head off when he gets you to forget to recite your juz. Any more questions, or shall we? Oh, no, two more questions. Okay.
The question is, Sheikh said that only a few people will be able to read the word kafir on the forehead of the Dajjal. What can we do to make sure that we will be among those? Apart from reading the Quran with the lunar time, what can we do more?
You must have a backbone made of steel, not a backbone made of recycled paper. Don't ever say, I can't do that. Standing up for the truth. If I do that, they will say I'm a terrorist. If I do that, I might lose my job. If I do that, my business might collapse. If I do that, they put my name on a no-fly list. My job is more important than Allah. My freedom to live comfortably is more important than Allah. You'll never get nur in that heart. When you stand up to live for Allah, then like Malcolm X, you're prepared to die for Allah. Only those who live for Allah will be prepared to die for Allah. Such people who show courage, much less courage and integrity, they are the ones who will get nur in their hearts. I went to Albania. I've been to Albania 3-4 times already. But this time they said, no, you're not allowed. Why? If I change my profile of scholarship, then I'm not a threat to the government of Albania. The reason why they would not allow me into Albania is because my profile of a scholarship is a threat to them. You cannot get nur in your heart if you're committing zina. You cannot get nur in your heart if you have a woman in the dark, like a rat, secretly. None at all. If you're a man, you must bring her into the sunshine. Let her walk the road with dignity, not to keep her in the dark. If you have to get nur in your heart, then Allah's messenger prophesied. He said the time will come when one man will have to maintain 50 women. I am seeing the evidence that we are approaching that day. So you cannot say, I am not yet ready for marriage. No. Every woman has the right to a husband. No man has the right to a wife. Every man has the duty to marry. And when you marry her and you maintain her, you provide her food and clothing and shelter, you're protecting that woman from another life, which could be bad for her.
The question is regarding Surah Al-Kahf, which is ought to be recitated on Yom Jumu'ah. How do we integrate it in the lunar recitation of the Quran?
Sometimes, but not often, sometimes, your juz on the day of Jummah would be Surah Al-Isra and Surah Al-Kahf. So you will both be reciting Al-Kahf on the day of Jummah and at the same time reciting your juz. Other than that, at other times, the day of Jummah, you will have a different juz of the Quran. So you have to recite your juz of the Quran. In addition to that, you also have to recite Surah Al-Kahf. But of these two, which one is more important? Answer: reciting your juz of the Quran is vastly more important. So if you don't have the time to do both, make sure you recite your juz of the Quran. But if you can recite Al-Kahf as well, then you do that.
The question is it acceptable to divide the juz of the day in 2 or 3 parts in the day?
Yes, there is no prohibition, provided that you complete your juz before you sleep. You can recite the juz in parts during the day, provided that you complete your juz before you sleep. Yeah.
Any advice for those who are starting to learn Arabic, are not yet fluent to read Quran in Arabic, they're still reading in
Yes.
phonetics?
When you recite for the first time, you may not be able to recite the whole Quran in 1 month. It may take 3, 4, 5 months. But when you finish, start again. When you finish, start again. And the more often you recite the whole Quran, the more familiarity you'll have with the words. And as you become familiar with the words, the recitation will become easier and easier. Allah says in the Quran, if you do not plant, you cannot reap. Tell me the ayah. If you do not plant, you cannot reap. Not you. Come on, somebody. وَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. The only one who can reap without planting is the banker. The bank. The rest of us, we have to plant if we want to reap. So if you want to reach that day when you can recite the Quran comfortably and khatam the Quran every month, if you're dreaming of that day, you got to work for it. You have to begin the Quran and don't stop until you finish it. And then start again and don't stop until you finish it. And when you become familiar with the words, then it becomes easier to recite the Quran and khatam the Quran every month. I was astonished, absolutely astonished. I couldn't believe it when I met Arabs who couldn't recite the Quran in Arabic. Yes, because they'd lost contact with the Quran. So may Allah bless all those who now make the effort. I have done my job and may Allah accept my effort. Now it's for you. May Allah bless all those now in whose hearts there is love for the Quran. And you demonstrate that love by ensuring that you recite the juz of the Quran every day. And get your wife to do it and get the children to do it. And when you try and you try and you try to get someone to recite the Quran and they don't want to do it, leave them alone. By the time your child reaches the age of 7, your child should be able to recite from any part of the Quran. By the time your child reaches the age of 10, that child should be reciting the correct juz of the Quran every morning before going to school, and khatam the Quran every month. That child is now protected. The Quran will protect that child all through his life.
What is the perfect balance in between learning, memorizing new verses of the Quran and keeping the recitation so that we khatam every single month?
The memorization of the Quran, to memorize the Quran is important, but the recitation of the Quran is the Sunnah of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So do not sacrifice the recitation of the Quran. وَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ الْقُرْآنَ. This is a command. There is no command in the Quran to memorize the whole Quran. No. But there is a command in the Quran to recite the whole Quran the way Allah recited it. Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ameen. Okay.